I am presenting Union Gospel Press's Sunday School Lesson number 4, Sunday, December 28th, 2025. Happy New Year. The lesson is entitled, No One is Like God. Lesson text comes from Isaiah chapter 40, verses 21 through 31. Related scriptures are Psalms 2, 1 through 12, 33, 1 through 22, 83, 1 through 18, Jeremiah 51, 15 through 19, 2 Corinthians 1, 8 through 11. The place is Jerusalem. The time is about 680 to 740 BC. When we think of God's holiness, it can be easy to focus exclusively on His glory or righteousness. There is, however, another aspect we need to consider: His power. God is the Holy One who has no equal. No false god can stand in comparison with Him. His power is unmatchable, and though the nations may rage against Him, they cannot triumph. He who created us sustains us, and we can take comfort in the knowledge that His plans will succeed. Today's aim, facts. To understand what Isaiah proclaimed about the character of God to a people in distress. Principle, to learn how no one is God's equal and that He rules over all things. Application, to take comfort in the holiness and power of God, knowing that He is sovereign over all rulers and will sustain His people. Illustrating the lesson, God's work in sustaining creation demonstrates His holy power. He alone created and He alone upholds the universe. Practical points. 1. Christians should recall what God has done in the past, Isaiah 40, 21. 2. Recognize that God created the universe and reigns over it, verse 22. 3. God has authority over human rulers, verses 23 through 24. 4. God alone stands above the fates of humans and kingdoms, verses 25 through 26. 5. In times of doubt, remember that God is the creator of all, verses 27 through 28. 6. Christians should hope in God alone, verses 29 through 31. Golden text. To whom then will ye liken me, or shall I be equal, saith the Holy One. Isaiah 40, 25. Today we have 3 lesson outlines. The first is Introduction, Isaiah 40, 21. The second is God of Creation, Isaiah 40, 22 through 26. The third is God of Hope, Isaiah 40, 27 through 31. Introduction. Isaiah 40 has long echoed as a message of hope. From Isaiah's 8th century context to the Babylonian exile and long after, this chapter has reoriented the despairing toward God. In the previous 39 chapters, the prophet's message is one primarily of grim warnings and impending doom. Those chapters reflect the political and military pressure that was mounting against Israel and Judea. From his 8th century Jerusalem dwelling, Isaiah witnessed the collapse of the northern kingdom under Assyrian force. He also endured the empire siege of Jerusalem some 2 decades later. To the modern reader, it seems that God's people were hopeless, but such an impression could not be further from the truth. After the grim warnings that dominate the earlier portion of the book, the prophet shifted his gaze toward a reality beyond the impending threat of exile. In the distance, Isaiah saw the promise of comfort and God drawing near, 41 through 5. There is hope for God's people, even in the midst of exile in a foreign land. Introduction, Isaiah 40, 21. Have ye not known? Have ye not heard? Have it not been told you from the beginning? Have ye not understood from the foundations of the earth? As Isaiah brings the prophetic tour de force that is chapter 40 to a close, he pauses to address his audience directly, verse 21. In four succinct questions, Isaiah invites his listeners, past and present, to consider carefully his words. God is not one of many sources of hope. He alone is the creator, and he alone reigns over the cosmos and human affairs. True hope is only in him. In the opening verse, Isaiah beckons us to look both ahead and behind us. His questions of our understanding and hearing are carefully worded in the present tense. He does not ask us to scour our memory in an effort to muster a response. He invites us to listen attentively to his message of hope. Accompany these are questions of history. His message is fresh, but it is hardly novel. Hope has always rested in the infinite God. Since time immemorial, he has been its only source. God of creation, verse 22. It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in. Verse 23. That bringeth the princes to nothing. He maketh the judges of the earth as vanity. Verse 24. Yea, they shall not be planted. Yea, they shall not be sown. Yea, their stock shall not take root in the earth, and he shall also blow upon them, and they shall wither, and the whirlwind shall take them away as stubble. Verse 25. To whom then will ye liken me, or shall I be equal, saith the Holy One. Verse 26. Lift up your eyes on high, and behold who have created these things, that sitteth out their host by number. He calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might. For that he is strong in power, not one faileth. Following its opening prompt to worship God, Psalms 113 captures the universal praise God already receives. Creation worships God from east to west, verse 3, and he is elevated over the nations and above the heavens, verse 4. It is tempting to reason such cosmetic proclamations come from a recognition of God's transcendent attributes and authority over the universe. Yet, as the verses that follow illuminate, these praises resound because of what God does despite his loftiness. From high above, he regards the lowly and needy. He raises them up and establishes them among the rulers, verses 6 through 7. His authority over the universe does not come at the expense of his concern for humanity. For this reason, all creation praises him. In the final section of chapter 40, Isaiah appeals to the same marvel that captivates the psalmist. Amid imperial oppression, it is natural to assume the God over the universe cares little about human circumstances. But this conclusion misunderstands God. He attends to the affairs of both the cosmos and society, and one does not eclipse the other. God of cosmetic affairs, Isaiah 40:22. Verse 22 describes God as the loyal craftsman. Sitting upon his throne, God reigns over creation from high above. In this passage, Isaiah relies upon ancient Near Eastern cosmology to plant his picture. Here, he places God on his throne above the circle of the earth, that is, the atmospheric dome looking down on Earth's inhabitants. From his vantage point, those dwelling below look like grasshoppers. They are minuscule in comparison. Numbers 13:33. His dominion is over all. Unlike most monarchs, however, God did not inherit his kingship. Like a master craftsman, God carefully constructed the cosmos he rules. He crafted the heavens that support his throne as a tent maker makes a tent. The intimate care God takes to extend the fabric of the sky recalls God's creative act in Genesis 2. Here, God assumes two more crafts. In Genesis 2:4-7, God appears as a potter, forming humanity from the earth, Job 10:8. In verses 8-9, God is the divine horticulturalist, planting Eden, verse 8, and growing trees, verse 9, for the humans he formed. In the ancient world, gardens connoted royalty, making the garden an application for God to dwell with humans on earth. There is nothing half-hearted or frivolous about God's creative act. The divine king crafted the heavens and the earth it covers with skill and care. God of human affairs, Isaiah 40:23-24. Although the inhabitants of the earth appear like grasshoppers from the heavenly throne, God is not disinterested in human affairs. He concerns himself with the societal operations and structures that afflict the weak. Here, Isaiah heightens the claims of Psalms 113, whereas the psalmist proclaimed that God raises the weak and poor to the status of princes. The prophet rejoices that God brings the wealthy and powerful to nothing. The king of the cosmos will not let tyrants reign unchecked. In verse 23, Isaiah states that God brings princes to nothing. Behind the Hebrew of this passage rests a pointed irony. Elsewhere in the Old Testament, the verb denotes the appointing of one to a position of authority. Ezra 8:20. God appoints these persons of authority, but he does not raise them to additional power. Instead, he appoints them to nothing, stripping them of the positions they cherish. In the parallel line that follows, the prophet heightens the irony. God makes the rulers of the earth like vanity or primeval chaos. The illusion Isaiah makes is clear. The chaos God brings the earth's rulers to is the same that once described the world. In Genesis 1:2, the author uses the word to capture the chaotic state of the world before God began to speak things into order. Although the word is translated vanity in Isaiah 40:23, Genesis reads without form 1:2. Stepping again into the creation theology that occupied verse 22, Isaiah compares the rulers to chaotic disorder. The God who carefully crafts the cosmos also tosses its rulers into chaos. He possesses the power to bring order and chaos. In the following verse, Isaiah drives his point home with a horticultural imagery. Here, he compares the powerful to plants. The growth of their authority and dominion has just begun when God sends his whirlwind and withers them. Their tyranny quickly dissolves when God arrives. The promise of a growing plant is replaced with a dead seedling blowing in the breeze. Once more, the prophet makes it clear the God who plants, Genesis 2:8, is also the God who causes withering. He alone is in control. Looking back to an earlier prophecy, Isaiah is not the first prophet in the Old Testament to speak against the powerful and affluent of society. In the decades before Isaiah, Amos of Tekoa traveled north to Israel and prophesied against the kingdom's heresy, although the core message of the two prophets is the same. God will bring down the powerful. The audiences are strikingly different. Whereas Isaiah's words differ, comfort to Judeans suffering under Babylonian tyranny. Amos Haber's Assyrian captivities to Israelites binded by their affluence. How could God speak such harsh words against his people and their enemies alike? Amos 6 gives us a glimpse into the way of life enjoyed by Israel's powerful. While the poor were selling themselves into slavery, 2:6, the affluent mistakenly plucked the lair as they rested on ivory beds, eating choice meat, drinking wine from bowls, and enjoying the finest oils. 6:4-6. Verse 3 accuses them of bringing a reign of violence, oppressing others for personal gain. Many in the kingdom suffered, but they did not care. In their gluttony, the rich and powerful grew blind to the looming threat of the empire. The surrounding areas, Calneh, Hamath, and Gath of the Philistines were collapsing under Assyria's weight, verse 2. But Israel's elite ignored it. They did not perceive the punishment coming upon them. For this reason, God would drive them into exile first, verse 7. In just irony, God would allow the heads of Israel to head the forced expulsion from the kingdom. God executes justice for the orphans and widows, and he loves the foreigner, Deuteronomy 10:18. In 8th century Israel, these enjoyed no justice or love from the political and religious leaders responsible for them. In response, God brought judgment upon the affluent, Matthew 23:12. In Isaiah 40:23-24, the prophet repeats this message. Yet, for an audience burdened under Babylonian exile, the message rings differently. It is no longer a warning, but a promise. God will tear down the rulers of Babylon. God of astronomical affairs, Isaiah 40:25-26. In the final verses of this section, the prophet focuses on the stars, in which the previous themes collide. After a brief quote from God stressing his unparalleled standing, the prophet calls his audience to gaze up at the night sky. Ancient Babylonian science attended to astronomical movements and patterns. Many in antiquity believed they could derive human fates from knowledge of the stars. These celestial bodies then applied as much to society as they did to the cosmos. In verse 26, Isaiah invokes military imagery, describing God's creation and knowledge of the stars like a captain leading his troops out. His knowledge of their names and ability to track each one emphasizes his power over them. Contrary to the science of the ancient world, God exercises control over the stars. He alone governs the fate of humanity. Hope, God of hope, verse 27. Why sayest thou, O Jacob, and speakest, O Israel, my way is hid from the Lord, and my judgment is passed over from my God, verse 28. Hast thou not known, hast thou not heard that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary. There is no searching of his understanding. Verse 29. He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increases strength. Verse 30. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. Verse 31. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They should run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. In the final verses of Isaiah 40, the prophet gives a voice to his audience. Here he quotes what they have said and addresses it. He assures them that hope in God is well founded. He alone exercises authority over time, space, and power, bringing much of what he has already said into focus. Isaiah brings chapter 40 to its pastoral conclusion. Have hope in God. He is the only solid ground one can stand on. The question, Isaiah 40:27. In verse 27, Isaiah asks why God's people claim their way is hidden from him and their legal cause ignored. These statements are reminiscent of the Bible's lament poems and psalms. Laments are a type of prayer or poem that occur in several books of the Bible, including Lamentations, the prophets, and Psalms. In the Psalter, laments are cataloged as either community laments, Psalms 44, which arose from a time of national crises, and individual laments, Psalms 42 through 43, which arose from a personal circumstance. Behind the claim that the people's way is hidden from God is the assumption that he has turned his face away. Psalms 13:16, 44:25. Likewise, the assertion that God ignores their calls suggests his allowance of legal cases going unjudged. 35:23. Each of these are common motifs among laments. At first glance, the people's lament appears appropriate. One of the most popular lament psalms arises from their very situation. Psalm 137 captures the exiles' lament over the destruction of Jerusalem. As they sit beside Babylon's rivers, their captors mockingly ask for a song of Zion, verse 3. But Isaiah calls them elsewhere. Their situation should not engender lament, but hope. The response, Isaiah 40:28 through 31. Isaiah begins by highlighting God's authority over creation's dimensions. As the everlasting God, he is over time. As the creator of the earth's end, he is over space. And as the one who never grows tired, he is over power. Babylon considered itself a global and immoral empire, squashing everything and everyone in its way. But it was not. Isaiah concludes his survey of God's unparalleled standing with the proclamation that God's understanding is unsearchable. So why does his audience question? Despite the delay they perceive in God's deliverance, he is at work. The redemption he promised would come to fruition in his timing. Therefore, the prophet concludes God is the one in whom they can hope. Even young men suitable for battle will grow tired. There is no profit in trusting in them. 9 chapters earlier, Isaiah mourns those who seek an alliance with Egypt as Assyria drew near. They trust in horses, chariots, and horsemen because of their number and force, Isaiah 31:1. But their decision is foolish. God is the only one worthy of hope. All others will fail. Questions 1. In what tense are Isaiah's first questions written? What effect does this have on the reader? 2. According to Psalm 113, why does the cosmos worship God? 3. How does God's rule over the cosmetic affairs of the universe affect his attendance to societal events? 4. In Genesis 2, what two crafts does God adopt to create humanity and the Garden of Eden? 5. How did Isaiah heighten the claims of the psalmist in Psalms 113? 6. What word does Isaiah use in 40:23 to allude to the earth's state before God began to order the cosmos in Genesis 1? 7. What is Amos's message, and to whom does the prophet proclaim it? 8. What did ancient Babylonians believe about the stars and the celestial movements across the night sky? 9. What are laments? In which biblical books are they most common? 10. Why did Isaiah consider it foolish to trust in foreign military strength? In what or whom should the people trust instead? This concludes the Sunday school lesson for Sunday, December 28th, 2025. Thank you for listening. Please remember to click the subscribe tab. God bless.